Gathered here today to open officially our Peace Embassy here in Scotland. It's been a long sought dream for many years to create or find such an embassy, so we're so happy that we could find this. Just a little bit of how the evening is going to go. Hopefully everyone has the programme in front of you. We're going to have a series of speeches from different faiths and different nationalities. There's going to be some songs. We're going to have a few pieces of food, a few pieces of drink. And we'll gather back again, hear a few more speeches, and then we'll have a prayer to officially open the Peace Embassy. So hopefully it's a fun-filled evening. Hopefully time also to communicate, get to know each other, as the theme for Interfaith Week is storytelling. So hopefully it's a chance in the breaks to actually share your story with our fellow brothers and sisters. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Oliver Lane, who's been the event organiser, so the UPF Director for Scotland, to share a bit more about behind the scenes. So, Oliver Lane.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for coming this long distance. Many of you have travelled very far from Scandinavia and from London, Birmingham. So we're really appreciative of your efforts to come and support us. As Eric said, we've been very keen to have our own spiritual home in Glasgow. It's in many ways my home. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather were all from Glasgow. I have at home a silver plate which celebrated my great-grandfather's wedding and was presented him to the church, and it's dated 1869. So I'm certainly the fourth Andrew Lane in that line. So I'm very glad and happy to be here in Glasgow celebrating this opportunity. We are very fortunate to have with us tonight Dr. Morton Sear, who has served as Director for Interfaith Scotland for a considerable number of years and accomplished really an awful lot. She will tell you a little herself, but she's the government in Scotland seeks her advice, seeks her opinion. Don't know if they always take it. Her counsel is well recommended and trusted. So we're very happy at Interfaith Week that she's agreed to join us. I was in Edinburgh for the opening of this Interfaith Week and storytelling in the Storytelling Centre in Edinburgh, which used to be John Knox's house. And we had a little buffet. It's amazing who you meet. And as we were going through to the presentations and the stories, this rather tall gentleman in a sort of minister's suit and a white collar came over and said, "Hello, I'm Ian." And he had a little badge of a cross, and he had a chain of office. And I said, "Oh, I'm Oliver. Pleased to meet you." I said, "You look quite important." He said, "Well, maybe I should. I'm the moderator of the Church of Scotland. I'm very pleased to meet you." And very nice gentleman he was. I did give him a card and asked him to be here, but he said he's got so many commitments just at the moment. But we hope we will see him soon. Anyway, without further ado, I think I'd be very grateful if Maureen could come up and officially open our Peace Embassy and say a few words. Please put your hands together.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maureen. I'm Director of Interfaith Scotland. Thank you very much for the warm introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, honoured guests, it gives me great pleasure to officially open the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification Peace Embassy here in Glasgow. So I think as it's mentioned, today is actually the 5th day of Scottish Interfaith Week, and it feels very appropriate that a peace embassy is being opened during Scottish Interfaith Week, as I know that the Family Federation are committed to building good interfaith relations. And I'm sure that going forward there will be opportunities for the Family Federation to hold interfaith gatherings here in this lovely building. I thought that our distinguished guests might like to hear a little bit about Scottish Interfaith Week. Just for a few minutes, since it is Scotland. So Interfaith Scotland actually came into being in 2019, in 1999, at exactly the same time as the Scottish Parliament was formed. So there's always been this interfaith relationship with the Scottish Parliament. And then in 2002 they got funding and they started, became a skill and started to develop. Then in 2004 they felt that the time was right to have a festival in Scotland, a week-long festival that would really celebrate the diversity of faiths in Scotland and would allow people to put the lens on that religious diversity. Now that, interestingly, was picked up by the UK Interfaith Network in 2009. So Interfaith Week, that celebrated across the whole of the United Kingdom, began here in Scotland. I think that deserves a clap too. That very first year, there were only 6 or 7 events. We were just beginning to get the whole process started, but there was one that I thought was very significant and quite beautiful. There's been a Scottish Religious Leaders Forum in Scotland meeting twice a year since 2002. And in 2004, when we said there's going to be a festival of faith, which is going to be known as Scottish Interfaith Week, they said we want to do something significant to mark that. And they got together and they thought, how do we show that there's a real connection, a real humanity between all the people in Scotland, between government, between faith communities, between ordinary people. And so they decided they would take the values that are inscribed on the Scottish Mace. Does anyone know what those values are? Right at the heart of Scotland there's a beautiful mace, and inscribed on it are the 4 values that are at the very core, the very heart of Scottish society. Anyone know any of them? I can tell you. Put you out of your misery. It's integrity, wisdom, justice, and compassion. Those are the 4 values inscribed in the heart of the Scottish Parliament. And every single faith tradition of the Scottish religious leaders said that's also at the core and at the heart of our faith traditions. Integrity, wisdom, justice, and compassion. And what the Scottish religious leaders then did was they went back to their scriptures and they found a quote. Each religious tradition found a quote on integrity, a quote on justice, a quote on wisdom, and a quote on compassion. And that was then put into a beautiful poster. It was a huge poster that they got framed, and then that was gifted at the launch of Scottish Interfaith Week 2004 in the Scottish Parliament. Now I know that the Family Federation would also have those values right at the core of the work that you do. Integrity, wisdom, justice, and compassion. And I wish you many, many years of happy engagement here with those values right at your core, as it is at the core of all faith traditions. So over the years, Scottish Interfaith Week has grown. There's now almost 100 events taking place just in this one week, which is in Scotland and across the whole of the UK, literally hundreds and hundreds. I was speaking to a lovely lady called Patricia from Birmingham who said, now Interfaith Week in Birmingham alone, there are 25 events that are taking place this week. So that's in one city alone. So it gives you a real sense of how that celebration of diversity of faith has grown. And you are part of that tapestry, of that picture. So I wish you many, many years of happy engagement with the faith traditions of Scotland and beyond here at your new Peace Embassy. So all the best going forward.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maureen, for officially opening embassy now. And it's funny you actually mentioned Patricia, because our next speakers will be Dr. David and Patricia Earle, or just Dr. David. So Dr. David actually has a strong connection to Scotland, studying his master's and doctorate in nutrition and agriculture in Aberdeen University, so a close Scottish connection there. And for the last 30 years, they've been working together with UPF and Women's Federation. Dr. David is actually the director for Universal Peace Federation in the UK, and his wife Patricia is actually working with Women's Federation in the Midlands area. And they've been working for 30 years, so actually just recently in September, they were awarded from the Birmingham Council of Faith an award for all their achievements that they've done working with interfaith. I think is very fitting and rewarding. So I would now like to invite Dr. David to the floor.
So the speaker after me, Steiner, from Norway. I learned that it's faster to fly from Oslo to Glasgow via London than it is to get a train from Birmingham to Glasgow via crew. 3 hours less than it has. Anyway, I'm sure all of you had your journeys to get here, so thank you very much for all the effort you've made to come together. That's part of the beauty, I think, of this kind of meeting. So I represent, I think you saw on the first slide, UPF, Universal Peace Federation and Women's Federation logos. And my wife and I kind of interplay between one another. We also have Mitty here representing the national and European level for Women's Federation. So I'll just share with you briefly, for a couple of minutes, some of the pioneers of interfaith. And then I'll share some ideas that we found very helpful, some of which you'll be doing yourselves and which are very useful. One of the main aims is for us that advocacy, that the collective voice of faith can feed into the political process and bring about positive change. And I think there's not enough of that happening. We can do a lot more. So the first slide shows there are many people who've pioneered interfaith in the UK. I'm sure some of you, Gareth, you'll know some of these faces. Andrew Wingate. He wrote one of the very first interfaith books called Encounter in the Spirit. I don't know if any of you have come across that. He would go into Muslim homes. He was the Dean of the College of the Ascension in a federation of colleges in Birmingham called the Selioka Colleges. And then he subsequently became the Bishop of Leicester, I think, the chaplain to the Queen, a great man. Peter Berry from Coventry Cathedral. Then he became the Provost of Birmingham Cathedral. Marcus Braybrook, I'm sure many of you are familiar with his incredible work over many years, a great friend of UPF. And Vaislav Mahinder Singh, anybody know who he is? He's a global figure in interfaith, not just in the UK. And then the next slide, of course, those are all the male of the species. But actually, when we first moved to Birmingham, we had a very beautiful introduction at what was called the Multi-Faith Centre of Harborne Hall, partly sponsored by Birmingham City Council, and especially from this lady, Friederike Rice, who became a very good friend of ours. She was the coordinator for that, of course. And on the next slide, you'll see her. She presented a plaque to Mother Moon when she visited Birmingham in 2000. And then the next slide shows an amazing elderly Jewish lady, still going strong at 101 years. So all of these have been tremendous role models for us, Patricia and myself, and I can't speak too highly enough of them. And I'm sure you have your own experience with other people. You have examples here in Scotland and throughout the UK. But I feel part of our remit is to try and inherit something of our legacy, those of us who are longer in the tooth and getting on in years, to the younger generation, so that they can take things forward. And that's not an easy process in our experience. It's a very challenging but very rewarding thing that we're trying to engage with. So I'll just share with you a few ideas, next slide, of things that we found helpful to us in terms of how we can build friendship, build relationships with one another, and then do something constructive for the public good. So this is at the heart of much of our work, Patricia's Women's Peace Meeting. This is our home in Birmingham, where sometimes we have 40, 50 nationalities, 100 people, and but the main thing is, as the next slide shows, not just making friends with one another, but doing something constructive. So in this particular meeting, we had Christian and Muslim chaplains sharing their story, and then a Sikh and a Hindu and a Buddhist lady became chaplains as a result of that meeting. And then also the next slide will show you ladies also wanted to engage, and they became volunteers in our hospital system in Birmingham, particularly in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And they would go 2 by 2, a Buddhist and a Hindu, a Christian and a Muslim, ministering to the people who were in the hospital. It was an amazing initiative, and through that, so this is the kind of magic ingredient, through serving the public good together, we build friendship, we overcome prejudice, fear, barriers, and then we can engage with one another more deeply and do more together. That's how I would say these two aspects of building friendship through serving the public good. And our experience with young people has been that that's a very powerful tool to multiply the good things that are already going on. So another initiative on the next slide is the Women's Federation Bridge of Peace, where the ladies go under an arch and make a friend one-to-one. So Christian, Muslim, black, white, old, young. And through making a friend, that can often dispel fear, prejudice, and even if you have just one friend from another faith, if you don't know anybody who's Muslim or anybody who's Jewish or whatever, you have a certain perception of that faith, that culture, from the media, whatever. But if you make a friend, then you start to look through the eyes of the friend. Even one person can transform your feelings towards a particular race, religion, culture, ethnicity, and so on. Again, together, caring for those less fortunate than ourselves. I'm sure you've been involved in many wonderful social action projects and work, especially during COVID. This is one where all the people of Birmingham, particularly the ladies from Patricia's Women Group, came together, and the money to build this children's home in India came from Birmingham's temples, mosques, gurdwaras, synagogues, churches, all collectively, to the point where when we opened this building, I couldn't speak. When I officially opened this in 2000, I couldn't speak because I felt the collective goodness of all the people who'd made that building happen. And that building on the next slide, you will see, gave many young people who are literally zero, Dalit, orphan children, no parents, no status, no future, the possibility to get an education and then to get a qualification, a degree, and so on. Another idea, the next slide, is traveling together. You may have done this already. I know you had this meeting in Iona just a couple of months ago, Oliver. Traveling together and being together for an extended period of time. So in this case, from 2003 to 2008, our Peace Federation organised trips to the Holy Land, Middle East Peace Initiative, and we were able to meet Native Americans, people from all over the world, but then we walked together through the old city of Jerusalem, Muslim, particularly from the Abrahamic faiths. And we ended up, I think the next slide will show you, this is at Yad Vashem, walking together at the Holocaust Memorial Museum. But the next slide shows you all of us at the Western Wall, and even inside Al-Aqsa, the third most holy site of Islam. Generally that's not possible, but in this case, because we were Jewish, Muslim and Christian brothers and sisters together, we were able to overcome security concerns and go into Al-Aqsa, Christian, Jewish, Islamic brothers and sisters, men and women all together. And I remember when the, I don't know if you were there at that time, Mike, but the Imam who spoke, he was weeping because he couldn't believe that we could do such a thing. But the point is we did it together. We can often do together what we can't do separately. Next slide. This was last Sunday at the Al-Mahdi Institute, formerly, as Gareth will know, the College of the Ascension, in this federation of colleges in Birmingham, Christian colleges. It was bought by a Muslim group, and in true Islamic tradition, they retained the structure, the cloistered arches, and made it even more beautiful. And they availed it to Patricia and myself for our interfaith meetings. So interfaith worship and devotion is something we've tried to pioneer. It's not a simple task, actually, whether it's to do with music or making sure everybody feels represented, as you know, in this challenge interfaith, that everybody can have their voice. But it's a beautiful occasion when we can do it, and in this case we had about 130 people from all faiths, and we managed to engage local city councillors. There was a Consul General of Pakistan there, so it was a dialogue between the political and the religious establishment. Next slide just shows you prayers for peace from all the different traditions. And then finally, working together. Working together, and now in this case, young people working together. So this was back in August of this year, when we had 12 young men and 12 young women creating a peace garden and doing something for the public good, but in the process, making friends with each other. In the beginning, they didn't know each other. There was a little bit of tension between, but by the end of the 3 days, they were just chatting away, and they'd made friends, sometimes for life. You know, people make friends for life, but it's serving the public good, and in the process, building friendship. I think there's one more slide. We got support from city councillors, the Police Crime Commissioner's office. I think that's it. Any more? Oh yeah, and then finally, bringing young people into Parliament. We'll be doing this in about 10 days' time. I think taking some of those young people, and they'll receive an award from their MP, a Member of Parliament, in recognition of their work, and they'll have the chance to speak for 3 or 4 minutes in Parliament and put it on their CV. And again, it's this, what I was saying, this challenge of how to inherit a legacy to young people so that they continue the good work which everybody is doing. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wow, if there was ever an ambassador for interfaith, it would definitely be Dr. David and Patricia. Oh, thank you so much for everything you've invested. So, we've heard the stories in Birmingham. Now we're going to jump country to Norway. So I'm going to invite Steinar Murud to the floor. And so Steinar is the UPF leader in Norway and helping coordinate all the Nordic countries.